After Joe Jones and Shadow, it was Gus, and they should have never let Gus go. But they let Gus go because Gus wasn't flashy. They wanted a flashy drummer. That's management and all
They
that.
sold out just a little
Sure.
bit. Yeah.
For what? The band and the guys in the band. You talk to any of the guys, Snooky Young and Thad used to talk about it. They all preferred. They generally preferred Gus, definitely.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. But no. I'm not saying Sonny couldn't play. He could
Oh,
play.
sure he could
was
play,
a wonderful
sure.
player. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching him and listening.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. He was not in that league.
No.
He didn't give the band a swing that it needed. He wasn't the Cat.
Yeah.
And neither was anybody after that. They never had one anymore, right to this day. In fact, that's the way it's been. But
we should mention that actually the drummer who was with the Basie band just a few years ago when Thad was leading it was actually one of the very few ones that you're very, very happy with.
Dennis
And we should
McCrell was
mention Dennis
the first
McCrell.
one to come along, but he's a modern drummer
Sure.
and he's got some ears and he's a musician and he can write music and he can play bass and he had all the attributes that if he would have been able to stay longer, he would have made some. If the band was going to go anywhere, he would have
Right.
got some notice.
Yeah.
Oh no, Dennis can play. I like him very much.
Yeah.
But I mean, of the routine during the period of while Basie was alive, they never hit it again, and that was it. But people can say, "What is he talking about?" I don't care what they say. I mean, I know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
And anyone who questions it should
Well, sit down and try and prove to me different.
might have heard our broadcast when we heard about when Mel Lewis, Mel's probably too much to say it now, but Mel was actually offered the drum chair in Count Basie's band in '48.
Oh,
so,
I was offered it
so
in
you know what
48.
you're talking about.
I know what I was talking about.
And we're gonna hear-
I don't know how I'd have done. I might have messed it all up. Who knows? But I never got the chance.
We're going to hear that band later as we get to Shadow Wilson because we have some extra Shadow. But I want to just bring it back just to Dave Tuff. For a
But
moment.
as far as Dave is concerned, Dave was a drummer who could play with anybody at any time. He never changed his own style of playing except to suit the music. But it would still be Dave Tuff. You can tell it's him on everything.
Yeah.
And he knew exactly what to do. And that's what he had to do on a piece like that. That piece just kept... It's one of those pieces that it's just based on riffs.
Right.
And they just kept getting louder and louder, and so did he.
Yeah.
Only he did it with the foot.
Yeah.
Oh, he was playing... He couldn't get too much louder with the cymbals. I mean, because,
Right.
how loud you going to bang,
Right.
But that foot created that tension. The same as if you're sitting out in front patting your foot.
Right.
You're going to start patting it harder also,
Yeah.
And if you're a dancer, if you're a good dancer dancing in front of the band, your feet are going to leave the floor higher. You're going to start dancing harder.
Yeah.
As that happens, you get more
Yeah.
excited. It's an excitement scene,
Yeah.
and it's really something.
Yeah. That's certainly a great example of it. Again, that was Red Top. And we're taking these tracks from the record on Hindsight
My
Records.
voice is getting higher as I'm
Woody Herman and the First Heard Volume 2.
No, mine.
Yours.
All right.
Right now, I'd like to play one more with Davy Tuff. This is kind of a more modern-sounding arrangement than the ones we've heard. This is called 125th Street Prophet, Prophet, written by Billy Moore, or by Phil Moore. Wait, is it Phil Moore? Arranged by Phil Moore, and not Millard Fillmore.
No, I knew Phil Moore.
Phil Moore from the West Coast.
I worked with Phil on the West, out on the West Coast.
Yeah. And this is 125th Street Prophet. Again, we'll get to hear one more track. Davy Tuff at, I guess, his real zenith with the Woody Herman
I
Band.
met Phil Moore when I was a kid, when he had a little group called the Phil Moore Four. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Buffalo. He came through there several times.
Well, we'll come back and talk about Phil Moore with Mel Lewis. Right now, let's hear 125th Street Prophet.
For women's styles, it's Fifth Avenue. The latest in dance rhythms, it's 125th Street. Woody Herman and his boys go straight to the heart of Harlem for some solid crystal gazing. 125th Street Prophet.
Now, see, now we're talking about while the record was playing, you're talking about him playing those figures, ba da ba da bop bop bop. You notice how exact they are with the brass. I mean, he's not ahead, he's not behind. He's playing it like as if he's playing one of the horns.
Yeah.
That's very important.
I've played in bands where
That's
where
something
charts
Sonny
have been
Payne
written.
couldn't do. If you listen to the old Basie records, he was always ahead, always pushing them, and never sitting back and actually listening to what the lead trumpet player was doing.
It's so funny how subtle Dave's playing there, but yet it sounds like he has the band in the palm of his hand. I
He
mean,
does.
they're all playing right
He
out of
does.
that time he's setting.
He's even got,
Yeah.
see, now Chubby, if you know, Chubby Jackson is also not ahead. He's trying to, he's back there with Dave.
Yeah.
He's sitting down a lot more, you know. See, those bass parts are written. That's, you can tell that they're not. Those are not improvised bass parts. Well, in those days, not most of the parts were written anyway to go along with all the, because there was so much ensemble writing that the arranger wanted certain notes played, you know. So and that's usually what happened, especially because everything is short. If there was solos. Actually, because Thad did the same thing. He always wrote the parts out for the bass player. Beautiful parts. Sometimes the bass players would say, man, I don't know what to play after this because it's so good, you know.
Yeah.
But usually if you stretch the solos out, you got to start making up your own parts and try to play something better than what he had written. It was not easy.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing to think what might have happened had Davy Tuff lived past the age of 40 or so when he passed away.
Of course, yeah. We don't know where he had gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd like to have heard him get into the bebop field a little deeper. With the ride cymbals and all that, you know, I'd like to have seen where he would have gone with a real ride cymbal. I never heard him play a real ride cymbal, only the Chinese.
Just the Chinese
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
I'd like to have known where he would have gone, what kind of a feel what would it have felt like, what would it have sounded like, what kind of cymbal would he have gone for. I think he would have been a Kay Zildjian man too, with the deeper sound. I don't think, but you don't know because his crashes are all crisp and high. I mean. But he loved that Chinese, which was very deep.
So
it's hard to say.
So then you had a great contrast between the high splashes.
And then the hi-hats
the
were
low.
small, but in those days they all were small. I mean, nobody had any big hi-hats in those days. 14 inches were... I don't think big hi-hats came on until Stan Kenton's band. Stan liked big hi-hats. I think Shelley was the first time I really heard pow with the big hi-hats.
Yeah.
And he really needed it. I think, well, Stan, I know he wanted it because when I joined the band, I came on with 14-inch hi-hats and I had to get larger ones. I had to get 16s. I hated them. They were so heavy.
When we do our next part of the History of Jazz Drums, which I should tell everyone will be next Tuesday, noon to 3, we'll be getting into Buddy Rich and Shelley Mann.
Yeah.
We'll be getting to talk about a lot of that stuff, too, and Max Roach, too. It's exactly 7 o'clock, and it's exactly 89.9 on your FM dial. WKCR FM in New York. Lauren Schoenberg here, and I'm spinning the records when Mel Lewis is giving us some great insight into the history of jazz drums. As we carry on in our first shows, we listen to people like Baby Dodds and Zutty Singleton and Stan King and Kaiser Marshall and Chick Webb and Sonny Greer and Joe Jones and a lot of other folks, and Chick Webb, of course. And this show we'll be getting into right now into Big Sid Catlett, and we just listened to an hour on Dave Tuff. If you had to just sum up in a sentence or two about Davy Tuff, what would you say, Mel, just to wrap him up?
Wrap him up? Well, I'll tell you. All I can say is that he didn't live long enough. He was probably one of the most musical drummers that ever lived. He certainly swung harder and looser than if you could have a top 5 of what you'd call a loose drummer, I wouldn't say he was number 1, but he certainly was within that 5, definitely. And if I went as far as 10, he'd still be in the top 5. I probably could go 10, but I would still keep him in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
And the only drag for him was that we didn't have him long enough. We never got a chance to see what he would have done in the 50s. You know, after he would have had more chance for himself even to listen to Max and
Which he did, by the way, because
oh, I know he did.
there
But I
are
mean, if he'd
stories
have had
about
more
him, yeah.
chance to hear
Yeah.
where those guys were going, you know.
there's some nice pictures. I've seen pictures taken at the Onyx or some
You
of
know,
those 52nd
because-
Street clubs with him, with Max. And
Because when
Bird.
I said that, you know, like all these guys are like we used to talk with Buddy Rich about this. You know, what you call signature drummers. Each guy has a style.
Yes.
But when you have a style, it takes a little longer to add to it because you know you've built up something, and especially Dave already was 40 years old or so when he died. Now that was not a kid. He had been playing since the beginning of jazz practically. You know, we're talking like early 20s through that ragtime into Dixieland, into swing, and he was just touching bebop when he died.
Yep.
Now, it would have taken him probably another, 2 years anyway. Like by 1950, I think we would have heard even a different Dave Tuff, a very, very modern Dave Tuff. I mean, that would have been pretty exciting.
Yeah.
With possibly a little different sound even.
Yeah.
But we never got a chance to hear him because he would have probably gone on and played with some different kind of bands
Yeah.
and played more with people like Dizzy and them, which he didn't really get to do.
One thing that I think he had a great deal of was a musical sense of humor, and so I have some records. I didn't get to bring them with me tonight, but there's some records where he does some very funny kind of things with. It seems though he didn't integrate the bass drum so much into making figures and stuff, but sometimes he'd whop sounds like a tom-tom. He must have had some kind of tom-tom with like a stick or something, in kind of a funny way. I have this record of Lullaby and Rhythm with Harry James, where it brings a smile to your face, and that's another
It's
thing.
probably his big tom-tom that
Yeah.
was as loose as everything as usual.
Yeah,
And
big
he probably
thack with fog.
with like a rim shot on the big tom-tom
Yeah,
or something like that.
in a very kind of funny place. And
Yeah.
whop, like this. I think that's something that most of the drummers up to this point that we've talked about have had. Also, was a sense of humor. I think it's hard for some folks to understand what I mean by that. And I don't mean that he's laughing at the music or being a comedian, but a sense of humor in the music. Yeah, and
Yeah.
He certainly seemed to have it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he did, definitely.
5 minutes after 7. I'd like to apologize to a few people who've called up tonight and tried to get through and talk to us, but can't believe we got a million records here and trying to get things set and also trying to listen to the music. So again, for those folks who are trying to call in, maybe a little bit later when we have a little bit more of a stretch of time, we can take some phone calls later. But again, my apologies.
Yeah, and you have to also understand is we have to listen. We have to
listen to the record.
Yeah,
we
so
can't
we know what
talk
we're going to
about
talk about
it. Yeah,
afterward.
we come back. Yeah, it was great. All right, well, right now we're going to switch. We're going to switch from Dave Tuff to a gentleman who he preceded and followed in Benny Goodman's band, the great Sid Catlett. And this first track will feature Big Sid Catlett with Sidney Bechet, just to kind of show the tradition that Sid Catlett came out of. He was from Chicago, growing up at the same time as Lionel Hampton, and came out of the great tradition of show drummers. And of course, he surpassed them all. And we'll listen to Shake It and Break It. And this is with Sidney Bechet, Sidney DeParis on trumpet, Sandy Williams trombone, Cliff Jackson piano, Bernard Addison guitar, Wellman Bro on the bass, and the great Big Sid Catlett on drums. This is Shake It and Break It.
See now, we just had 2 tracks of Big Sid. Now, see now, what he played on that track, on both those tracks, actually, would have fit on almost anything. I mean, he could have played that same style, that same way. And if you remember back to our old last program, with Joe Jones and all that, and then now we just had Dave Tuff, and now we're having Sid. There's a way. It was still hi-hat time. Nobody was really into ride cymbals yet. Hi-hats were the thing, and they all had this hi-hat thing with the rim shot on 4, on the 4th bar or the 2nd bar, with a deep sound. These are 6-inch snare drums. They're all playing on big snare drums, not little ones.
By 6 inches, you mean that's
6.5-inch wooden snare drums. On calfskin heads. That's that sound, and there's nothing like it. That's what I use today. I mean, I'm not bragging. I use it because they did it. That's because that is the sound. You can't beat a 6.5-inch wooden snare drum with calfskin heads. And that's what they played then, and that's what they would be playing now, and that's what I'm playing now. Because there's something about metal snare drums it's a little tinny. And it's not a jazz sound. It's a legitimate sound, and it's a real snare drum sound. These guys are not striving for a snare drum sound. They're striving for a jazz sound, a sound of an individual sound. It was much easier to find your own thing. If you you could make yourself something. You could become you more with a wooden drum than you can with a metal drum, because the metal drums sound too much alike. Whereas a wooden drum, you can actually change the personality of the drum, with a little tuning and a little figuring things out.
Yeah.
Different sticks, different touch, different different weight of heads and all that. But you get to know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
And Sid Catlett certainly did. Also, he had a fantastic feel.
That's one thing I was going to remark upon was outside of the incidentals of what he was playing was just the way that those recordings felt. They had this,
Well, he made them feel.
He had that thing, yeah.
Again, he was the strong man of the rhythm section. See, the other guys, the drummer really should be. I'll tell you, that something a lot of people forget is that, now the guitar player, the piano player, and the bass player, they have to worry about notes. They've got more to worry about than just keeping time. The drummer has to keep time, and a good drummer knows how to be colorful and keep time. But he doesn't have to worry about what the next chord is.
That's what you were talking with Panama Francis about last week, remember?
See,
the drums?
he doesn't have to worry about that. And that's a big headache to not have to worry about.
Yeah.
It's good. He's got to know the music. He's got to know what's happening, and he should be able to hear what's going on. And he should know when everything else is wrong or right. But at the same token, he doesn't have to worry about what's the next note I'm going to play. A bass player has to worry about that. He's got to play the right note, plus in the right spot. Now, that's something to worry about. So it really shouldn't be up to the bass player to take care of all that. The drummer should be the strong man of the rhythm section without shoving it up everybody's rear end. But that's no way to play, and that's no way you want to hear music. That kind of drumming, to me, is stupid, That means you really don't have any confidence yourself. Right. You should be able to sit back and relax, and everybody will just sit back with you, and everything will be correct. Everything will be right. But if you got to force the time on everybody, that means nobody knows what's really happening. That means the time isn't really right if you have to force it, And people like this, like Catlett, never had to do things like that. Because everybody just said, when Big Sid's there, man, there's just nothing to worry about.
Yeah. We should again mention the recordings we heard, Shake It and Break It, and then Duke Ellington's tune Old Man Blues, and again, great work by Sidney DeParis, trumpet, Sandy Williams, trombone, Cliff Jackson, piano, as Mel mentioned, used to be married to Maxine Sullivan, Bernard Addison, guitar, Wellman Broad on the bass, and Sid Catlett on the drums. 16 minutes after 7, you're listening to WKCR-FM in New York, 89.9 on your FM dial. If you just tuned in, my guest this evening is the one and only Mel Lewis. And who better than one of jazz's greatest drummers to tell us about some of jazz's other greatest drummers. This is a series that we did actually several years ago, and that we've decided to reprise, and instead of just rebroadcasting the old shows, we decided to do it over again. And again, it's the history of jazz drums. We started with Baby Dodds, and we're going to get to Tony Williams and Elvin Jones and beyond by the end of the series, which will be Lord knows when, in a few months or something like that. But we're doing tonight, and we're doing next Tuesday, noon to 3, too. Right now we're talking about Big Sid Catlett. Why don't we hear Big Sid with Benny Goodman, and then we'll come back and ask Mel when he saw Big Sid Catlett in person for the first time. This is a rare setting for Sid with Benny. It's the only trio selection that exists. It's from a radio broadcast. Mel Powell's on piano, Big Sid is on the drums, Benny Goodman on clarinet, and this is Ida.
Benny Goodman and his band in clarinet, a la King.
For your dancing and listening pleasure, Mutual has presented Benny Goodman and his orchestra from Frank Daly's Meadowbrook on Route 23, the Newark Thompson Turnpike in Cedar Grove, New Jersey, just 15 miles from New York. Your announcer has been Frank Dunn. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
All right, let me just identify those tracks before we go to Mel Lewis. We heard Ida with the trio with Big Sid, Mel Powell, and Benny, then Clarinet a la King, Benny Goodman on clarinet, and then 1 o'clock jump with Lou McGarity, Vito Musso, Cootie Williams, and Mel Powell on the solos.
See, now, that was great because you got to hear, now on the trio sides, he played with such restraint. He played lightly, you know, and you know,
Politely.
it was just, because, you know, it was different because Mel Powell was a different kind of piano player, too, than like when Teddy Wilson played. You know, Mel was a little more modern.
Yeah.
And Sid fit in perfectly with that, and he played. You know, the tempo was just, you know, just perfect, nice little groove tempo, and he went along with the own chink dink a tink chink a dink chink a dink. You know, light bass drum, never got heavy with the bass drum,
Yeah.
and and you didn't miss the bass at all, you know, and it was just pure taste all the way, and he stayed on Brusselway. Now on clarinet a la King. Now I know the arranger because I played it myself a few times, so I know that that is written for brushes. Eddie Sauter wrote the drum part is brushes, and when he went to Styx, in fact, usually I used to go to Styx a little sooner than that because you can use your choice, but he went to Styx where it says in the part to go to Styx, and he played some of his own little things in there. And the little fills on the end, ka-dee-ga, you know,
Yeah.
because it's actually written ba-dee-ga, ga-dee-ga, ga-dee-ga-doo-da. That's the way it's written. And it's supposed to be offbeats, and he played ya-ga-dee-ga-ga-dee-ga-doo-ga, you know.
Yeah.
They couldn't go wrong. And it was typical Sid.
Yeah.
And then of course on the 1 o'clock jump, which is again a riff with a long build, as you could hear before the announcer came on, and of course the engineer took the sound down. He was building with the bass drum,
Yeah.
which is the thing to do at that time, especially. And again, it had that beautiful bouncy feel he had.
Yeah.
And he also played. You heard his Chinese cymbal behind Benny on. In fact, I heard it on clarinet a la King. But you also heard it behind the solos on 1 o'clock jump.
Yeah. It was fascinating too the way that each soloist on 1 o'clock jump got a different background.
That's right.
I mean,
Some got high
soloist to soloist, it was different
Exactly.
every time.
Yeah.
Change of chapter.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know. But he still kept building, and as the riffs kept building, and as the band started building for that big ending, which we just never got to hear, he was giving a perfect build with the foot.
Yeah.
It was the time, the feeling, the whole shove was coming from his foot.
Well, I'll tell you what, I do have a recording here of him with the band playing one of those arrangements that does build up towards the end, so maybe we could just play that as our last big band item for Big Sid Catlett. It's the extended version of Rollin'.
Oh, okay.
And this is, again, one where the sound quality leaves a little bit to be desired, but for those folks that might ask me the following question. Lauren, you're doing a radio show. Why don't you pick a recording where Sid's better recorded so that we can analyze and listen to the specific drum sounds he's making better? The only thing I could answer to that question, which I'll undoubtedly get sooner or later, would just be that on a recording like the next one, the feel is so great, the band is swinging so much that tells as much about what Big Sid was doing as if it was a better recording you could hear.
Yeah, you
every
also
little
got to
note.
understand that the better recordings generally were made in studios, and they don't feel as good because
That's right.
everybody's spread out, and you have to understand recording in a studio is not as good as live. When you get live broadcasts, recording quality does suffer, especially from the older days, but the feelings,
Yeah.
solos, everything that happens, the fact that there's an audience out there, the players play better,
Yeah.
and you really get to hear what the player is all about. So you just have to, something's got to be sacrificed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear this Benny Goodman Big Band again. We'll hear solos from Vito Musso, Billy Butterfield, Cootie Williams, not a bad trumpet section.
Not bad at all.
Jimmy Maxwell, Cootie Williams, and Billy Butterfield. Not bad. And Mel Powell on the piano. This is Mary Lou Williams, Roll 'em. And again, we're going to listen for Big Sid.
Roll 'em.